7:30, Friday morning. Good morning to you. OTB AM, Adrian with you. Nathan's here. Good morning to you, Nathan.
How are you?
What's happening? You got so much of a good thing last week. You were like, put me back in the big chair, coach.
Who knew it was so much fun? Who knew it was so much fun?
It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of good reaction last week. Not to too much you did, but...
What was the good reaction?
No, there was a lot of people supporting you in your bullshit argument about whatever it was we were having an argument about.
You were wrong once again.
That's just a general fact.
No, it's great to be here, though, as I arrived home from the Aviva Stadium at about 11:45 last night, frozen solid, trying to warm myself up. I was thinking the thoughts of getting out of bed at 20 to 6 are not appealing right now. But now I'm here, Adrian. Your beautiful face. I don't regret it.
We know you're lying now. You were at the Aviva last night. It was freezing cold. There was you and 18,000 others.
I was going to say, how do you know, considering you were prawn sandwiching it last night?
I was there, Nathan. Listen, I was there. I was making the point last night that being at that game last night is a bit like gives you O'Byrne Cup style kudos. Like it's... You know what I mean? I've been there through... I got my passport stamped last night.
So next June, when the tickets are floating around for the big games against Spain at Euro 2020, you're going, were you there against New Zealand? Yeah. Were you there that night?
But Dan McDonald was making the good point that there'll be... Take care about who you listen to in years to come, about who was there for Troy Parrott's debut, because there weren't many.
No, 18,000. I don't have a great issue when it comes to attendances for friendlies. I think people get wrapped up quite quickly. And what does it mean for Irish football? Are people falling out of love with the Irish team? It was a Thursday night. It was bitterly cold. And there's a big match coming on Monday. If
you'd have put out a team that was roughly close to the team that might play on Monday night and indicated that might be the case, I think it might have got a few more in the gate on the basis of, you know, let's go and see where we're at. How are those players getting on? As opposed to like this could have been a friendly in the middle of February. It was like it bears no impact on Monday's game at all.
No, they tried to create the buzz obviously by naming the team 24 hours in advance, and Troy Parrott is playing and Jack Byrne is playing, and hoping that would get a few more people in. But the fact that the conversation all week had been that this was going to be a totally experimental side, with little or no hope really of pushing their way into the starting 11 on Monday, man, it was sort of an irrelevance, and it probably gave the players a little bit of freedom. I'd imagine they would have liked a bit more pressure in one way. They would have liked to have been going out thinking, you know what, I go out and I perform tonight, I've got an opportunity. But for somebody like Troy Parrott, Jack Byrne, those very inexperienced players, Lee O'Connor, being able to make your international debut sort of away from the spotlight, it's done now. So Troy Parrott's in. We don't need to have a big occasion next March of it's on.
Why wouldn't he have just left that unsaid yesterday or during the week? Why wouldn't Mick McCarthy have just said, here's my team to play, you know, you can see by the team this is going to be the team for the future, it's hugely exciting, let's see how they get on? Why couldn't he have just left it at that? Why does he need to go the extra step to say, doesn't matter how any of them play, none of them are going to play Monday night?
Well, I think it was more a reverse of that. It was, are we going to see the more senior players play? We saw a few of them come on for a few minutes here and there last night, but it was, actually, I'm going to hold back all my starting 11 as much as possible because they need to be ready to go. I can't take any risks. Anyone who I want to play on Monday night, I don't want out there for a full 90 minutes. And
even to keep the Danes guessing, just no requirement to do it. It struck me that it must be, from players' point of view, like it puts a little bit of a burst the bubble, small bit of a couple of players making their more than a couple, making their full debuts. Like, just leave whatever, everybody understands the dynamic of it.
Well, if
like
everybody understands...
Troy Parrott goes out, the point, the cliche that was made during the Troy Parrott goes out and scores a hat-trick, what do you do? It bursts his bubble slightly to say, listen, it really doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to feature on Monday night.
Well, he didn't say they wouldn't feature. I think there were opportunities last night for them to come and show I should be the first one off the bench, and actually that'll be one of the more interesting aspects of who did that last night. Was it Troy Parrott? Was it Seanie Maguire? Maybe it depends on how the game on Monday night develops. But everybody knows what the 11 is pretty much going to be. Even if he hadn't said that, realistically, I think the only players with anything to gain from last night in terms of pushing for a starting place were Robbie Brady, Alan Brown and Josh Cullen. That potentially Conor Hourihan's place in the team is up for grabs. He was dropped last time out. Brown came in. There's a spot on the right-hand side where maybe Robbie Brady was a contender. Didn't take that chance from everything Mick McCarthy said after the game. Callum Robinson comes on, was probably the best player for his 20-minute cameo. Certainly looked a little bit of a step above everybody else. I get what you're saying, and I would feel that in games like this, and I always feel this with friendlies, it never happens, that you would play 7 or 8 of your first team. That and this may sound crazy and ridiculous, like I think Seamus Coleman should have played last night.
I would 100% agree that you've got to get so
Seamus Coleman obviously is suspended from Monday night.
Yeah.
He was there
Yeah.
at the game last night. He's our most experienced player. He's the captain. He's not playing at club level. What can go horribly wrong? Now, maybe there's behind the scenes medical issues where they say Everton don't want him playing in an absolutely meaningless friendly. All of that. We don't know that side of things. But doesn't it give people a better opportunity to show what they can do if Seamus Coleman even is playing it right back? Would have been harsh on Leo O'Connor, who actually did very well. But if you're thinking about playing potentially Josh Cullen or Alan Brown, right, maybe you don't want Glenn Whelan playing 2 games in 4 days, but stick Jeff Hendrick in. Or put Conor Howard in alongside Jack Byrne.
Yeah, and also the fact that they get so little time together to actually try and gel and understand what each other's like. So little game time. Like, use that as the opportunity to. I understand, and it's great that like Mick McCarthy can never forever say that he gave Troy Parrott his full debut and Jack Byrne, etc., and that's right and proper and fair play to him and all that. And that probably could have still happened in the context of putting out 6 or 7 or 8 of the team that are going to play Monday night by way of, here's a bit of the plan, and let's go and see how we can play together.
The flip of that is, and having been down at the mix zone and talking to some of the players and just seeing the general atmosphere, an awful lot of those who played last night have been around the squad for the entire year that Mick McCarthy's been there, and because he's only had the 2 friendlies, haven't really been given opportunities. So they've come over for every camp. A couple of them have got a minute or 2 off the bench here and there, but really haven't seen a whole lot of game time. He's rewarded them by putting them all out there together.
I would use and say F that. You know.
Actually it worked very well because now they're heading into a weekend where all those guys who went out last night, I'd say, are buzzing.
I know, but
they're thinking, you know what, I played well, we got the victory.
Mick McCarthy has to be more selfish than that and say, what is the best thing I can do here to help me get a result on Monday night? And like,
well, he thinks the best thing, clearly, and it's hard to argue against him with this because Denmark is the biggest game of the group. We win this, we go through. All Mick McCarthy was thinking, if I go out and I do what we want him to do there and play 6 or 7, somebody gets injured, and that is not worth the risk. He plays Dave McGoldrick up front. That is not worth the risk. Now, obviously, he's looking at certain players, like McGoldrick wasn't even in the squad last night, either with Shane Duffy, Matt Doherty, that they're 3 players who've had little niggly injury problems at the start of the season, so he was going to take no risk with them whatsoever. But that an injury suddenly to John Egan is something he doesn't want to countenance. Enda Stevens goes out there and gets a little bit of a strain. There's 4 days. There's no coming back from that. And he doesn't really have any backup. So that's clearly what he was thinking, and that was his priority, that come Monday night, the 11 he wants fit are fit. It does mean you're sort of clutching at straws, trying to take things from last night's game, and even looking through the various player ratings. And look, you know all about player ratings, Adrian.
Do I? What's the insinuation here?
Well, you know, anyone get a 3 out of 10 last night?
For me, I think the offtheball.com ratings are as cutting as they've always been. But it's funny looking around the papers. Josh Cullen gets the best rating in the Mail, Leo O'Connor in the Examiner, Shawnee Maguire gets the same as O'Connor in the Times, Jack Byrne gets it elsewhere. Like, there's a bit of fairly even spread of kind of 7 out of 10s.
It is incredible how people see the game so differently, and we've all done player ratings, and you're seeing certain things at certain times, and you stick it down. You're like, screw it, I'll just leave it there. Yeah. Who ultimately cares? As long as you're not slating somebody. As long as you're not going 3 out of 10 or 10 out of 10.
Never crop up again.
Anywhere in the middle. But to be honest, I barely even noticed Josh Cullen for the vast majority of the game, and then I heard people raving about him afterwards. One of the ratings there gave Robbie Brady a 7 out of 10, saying, grew as the game got on, probably Ireland's best player in the second half. I thought Robbie Brady was Ireland's best player in the first half and faded quite dramatically in the second half. So it was that sort of game that was a lot of 5, 6 and 7 out of 10.
Best player for you?
Huge amount? Best player from different periods, I think. As I said, first 10, 15 minutes, I thought Jack Byrne and Alan Brown were brilliant. Set the sort of right tone of getting on the ball, doing the right thing. Byrne, as has been sort of the case even at times with Shamrock Rovers this season, certainly when I've seen him in bigger games, and the Dundalk game is probably the Dundalk games are the ones you judge him most on. It tends to play very well for the first 15, 20 minutes. The difficulty is when teams then kind of figure him out.
Right.
Maintaining that, and from what I gather, he's been under a bit of pressure at both club level and international level not to drop deep. That maybe his temptation when that happens, so gets to do what he wants for the first 15, 20 minutes. Teams sort of get a bit closer to him. His temptation is to go between the 2 centre halves, drop deeper and deeper and deeper so he can get more of the ball. Whereas Mick McCarthy wants him a bit further up the pitch where he could do some damage, which means he can find himself a little bit isolated, doesn't probably get involved. So those two first 10, 15 minutes were great. Robbie Brady had spells during the game. After Sean Maguire got the goal, brilliant finish. Suddenly he came to life for 10 or 15 minutes and was absolutely flying, central to everything. But the one who gained most last night was Callum Robinson, who I just thought when he came on was absolute step above everybody else. And if there was a question mark on that right-hand side, whether it was him or Brady or potentially even Callum O'Dowda, I think that's gone. I don't think there's any question that Callum Robinson will start. Now, he hasn't played like that when he has actually started the games. And to worry even on the good things that Maguire did, the good things that Parrott did, and that Callum Robinson did, they were all sort of more through a central role, whereas quite often when they pick the ball up in the competitive games, they're always out in the right-hand touchline or the left-hand touchline. Even the few times Robinson found himself out in the wing, just looked a little bit lost and uncertain. So when they're 25 yards out, central position, they seem to know what to do. But are they going to get to be in that position? Yeah. We'll hear from Alan Brown later, and he was quite honest in thinking, like, that type of football was great last night, but...
Well, you never forget about seeing it again.
I was like, we don't see that come to competitive games.
So depressing, isn't it?
But they are totally different. Like, New Zealand hadn't played in 520 days.
I know that, but like, Jesus Christ, why do we have this acceptance that when we go into a competitive match that we just can't play football? And like, I agree, the last place we're going to see it is in this competitive a game where the result is everything. Like, whatever about starting out in the campaign or building into it. But as Stewie said last night, was there co-commentary or some version of it at some point late in the game, which I'm sure had people tuning in their droves.
Wow.
Just to get that out on air. Not Stewie's input, obviously, or yours, but the general point of having it at all.
Wow.
That we've deteriorated as the group has gone on. So any notion that we're going to start suddenly seeing us play a bit of football on Monday night is crazy. But could we not show some sort of level of ambition to play football at some point, under sub-manager, soon, anytime, anybody, please?
Well, if only that was about to happen.
I mean, there's a lot of people, look, fair enough. Let's reserve judgment. Let's hope that's exactly what happens. Like, I mean, if Stephen Kenny comes in and we start to play football and the results don't start to go his way immediately, it's a different level of pressure that he's going to be under than he's ever been under before.
Right, we need to stop that conversation because it's nonsense.
What?
What if Stephen Kenny tries to play football and results don't go his way?
Yeah.
The last 2 or 3 managers haven't tried to play football and results haven't gone their way.
No, but I'm saying that it's very easy that he might retreat back into a shell. Fair point, but like, how gung-ho is he going to be? He's not in a Mick McCarthy style scenario where he's going to knock a couple of years out and he's gone. I mean, that may well be what happens, but that's not how they're setting out. They're setting out that he's the manager for until whenever. So does he retreat into a shell due to that pressure and it isn't, with the best will in the world to the clubs he's been at, anywhere near the level of pressure he'd been under before?
I would be shocked if he retreated back into a shell. But also, when people talk about a sort of revolution coming under Stephen Kenny, we're not talking about 4-2-4, all-out, Kevin Keegan style, reckless, abandonment, attacking football.
As much as we'd love to see that.
It's actually just the basic things we're talking about that good technical international teams do, which is get on the ball, pass it around. When you get possession, keep hold of possession. A lot of Dundalk's success over the last 5-6 years when he was there was built on their defence. Most of their outstanding players, a lot of the time, were defenders. But getting the best out of somebody like Sean Gannon, having a plan whereby your wing-backs are utilised properly in the game. Our wing-backs should be our best players because they're playing at the very highest level in the Premier League. We rarely, if ever, see them get forward. We can't believe our luck when they do. So I don't think people should suddenly expect some sort of crazy attacking football. I think what they'll see is a team who are encouraged and told, and without going all Giles on it, where Giles would say with the problem maybe with Martin O'Neill was they're not told not to do it. So that...
I'm confused. I know it's easily done. But.
So that when players, when midfielders, as will be the case probably on Monday night, aren't holding on to possession, that the manager isn't losing the rag with them going, what are you doing? You need to hold on to possession. It's, all right, we took the safe option. That actually, Stephen Kenny will pick players who respond to what he wants to do. So there will probably be, and without question, there will be issued, I would imagine, where there are certain players in that team who won't suit what he wants to do.
Stephen Kenny?
Of course.
Yeah.
But it's going to be the same with any manager, that there will be players who don't suit the system. But I've mentioned it before, I think the most promising thing with the 21s is that an awful lot of those players have little or no experience But when they're with the 21s, they're doing the right thing all the time. And I can't accept that the current crop won't want to do that as well. Regardless of respect, not knowing what he does, and I think they'll all be very well aware of what he does at this stage and what he's achieved. They'll be ready for what he has to bring in the training ground, and I just think they will be crying out for a manager who says, go and express yourself and play a bit of football.
Yeah, well, it's not like Brian Kerr coming in a number of years ago where a lot of players at that time were like, who is this guy? I've never heard him before. Primarily because if players don't know who Stephen Kenny is now after a 2-year run-in, then that's on them. And also he's worked obviously with a whole pile of them and has achieved stuff as well. Beautiful programme last night, by the way, from the ground with that painting of the man that Nathan has just mentioned there a few moments ago, John Giles. I'm all for that kind of a moody programme. Like the player sort of Dave McGoldrick jumping up with celebrating a goal thing doesn't really do it for me anymore.
No, the FAI
I want to see more of this.
programmes have been brilliant for the last couple of years. They always go with something a bit arty.
Yeah, that suits you down to the ground.
Oh.
You'd be a real arty-farty type, wouldn't you? You'd be like, give me a museum. Most weekends you'd be off to the Irish Museum of Modern Art. You're not saying you're not saying you don't do it.
Says your man.
Right, we've John O'Shea coming up to analyse some of that game. We do want to get a quick thoughts of Mick McCarthy here. He was talking last night about Troy Parrott's debut.
He stood up and sang last night, and he was double confident. He can sing and all, which is it's dreadful, isn't it? He can do everything. He's confident in here, stands up and sings. He can play football. Good looking. Hey ho, where did it all go wrong for him? No, he'll be all right, will Troy.
He sung Stand By Me, apparently, which, I mean, he's got quite the vocal range there. So fair play, Troy Parrott. And we have had a comment in as well from the Francie Brady on YouTube saying, if we try to play like that against Denmark, it'll be another 5-goal hammering. We shall see. It's 7:47 on this Friday morning. Here's the flavour of what's coming up between now and 9:30 with myself and Nathan. We're going to get stuck into the sports pages in just a few moments' time with more reflections on the football last night and plenty more besides as well. John O'Shea going to give us his thoughts on the game last night and probably more so look ahead to the crucial game against Denmark on Monday night. That is just after 8 o'clock. And more reaction from the Aviva last night. Our reporters were down there en masse, so we'll have plenty of reaction from the mix zone afterwards. We're going to hear the sports news at about 8:30, and then it's rugby a lot of the way after that. We're going to have Ronan O'Gara on the line. Obviously, he'll be making his Heineken Cup debut with La Rochelle over the weekend, so we'll get his thoughts on that, as well as the various dynamics for the provinces heading into the opening weekend of the Heineken Cup, and Alan Quinlan too with us just after 9 o'clock to continue that conversation. So whatever it is that's floating your boat this morning, do get your comments coming into us and we'll bring them to our viewers over the course of this morning. You're watching OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio on whatever platform it is that you're watching. We're delighted to have you with us. It's 7:49 and time for the papers.
OTB AM.
Going to kick you off with the Irish Times. We'll let Giles have a bit of a light on there for a minute. Kick you off with the Irish Times, which has a photograph, obviously, from the game last night. And young guns step up to improve mood in the camp. Is the thoughts here of Emmett Malone from the game last night. That was the Williams goal there that's photographed. McCarthy doesn't expect any bolters for Denmark. This was the point that we've just been discussing there over the last while, and their player ratings as well. Leo Connor on an 8 and Shawnee Maguire on an 8. Were the two main takeaways there.
See, often timing is everything, so that when reporters are getting around to writing their player ratings, if you do something at just the right time...
Sure, they're impossible. How can you, like, legitimately rate 11 and whatever, 4 or 5 to come off the bench? It's impossible.
You don't need to tell me. I remember doing player ratings for the Denmark game away from home, and Dan MacDonald gave me dog's abuse when at 2 o'clock in the morning I was... telling him over a glass of wine that I still hadn't finished them. He was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I had them finished, but then Ireland scored in the last minute.
Yeah.
And I had to rewrite them all again.
And
to be honest, I just didn't have the time. Some of the things I'd said sounded ridiculous now, so, you know.
I break the habit of a lifetime.
That's the difficulty. The Star firsty work, which I'm not quite sure on. I guess it's because all 3 players scored their first international goal. Ireland rallied to survive Kiwi scare. We shouldn't forget that we actually went behind to this team that hadn't played a match in 520 days. Who did look pretty well coached, and
they look shite.
A few nice passages.
They looked shite. They
were
think? Terrible.
No, I thought they'd put together some nice...
Before they scored the goal in the first
half,
I thought the best opportunity for us to get a goal here would be just give them the ball. They were that bad. They were brutal. They looked like as if they couldn't play it out from the back. They were awful. They would look like a team who haven't played a game in 560 odd, whatever the hell it is, days.
think you're being harsh on the lads there. You know? Weren't helped by the fact that, someone like Winston Reid hasn't played in 2 years at all.
Yeah.
So I thought they did okay. They weren't the worst team I've ever seen.
Up there.
HRI sanctioned club. This is going to be a big story, I imagine, over the weekend. Tom Malone, I'm sure, will fill us in on a bit more of the details. But Horse Racing Ireland has announced all registrations of horses under the ownership of Supreme Horse Racing Club have been voided following a persistent failure to provide requested information. HRI said it had consistently sought and not received the requested complete members' information for horses running under Supreme Horse Racing Club. Their entries were suspended last month. The syndicate is responsible for Cheltenham Gold Cup favourite Kemboy, but they're not going to be allowed to own or part-own horses registered under rules in Ireland. There's a lot in this story that we might get into a bit more detail with Tom. And Mateus wants Pep to return. This on the back of a couple of papers. Maybe it's just a quiet time and an international break. But Lothar Matthäus, who is obviously a Bayern Munich legend, wants Pep Guardiola back at Bayern Munich. That following the sacking of Niko Kovac. Guardiola, 2 years left on his contract at the Etihad. And just a couple of stories inside. The Star, Sean Maguire, talking about his goal and hailing the influence of Robbie Keane, says he had a halftime pep talk from Robbie Keane, very much telling him he was doing the right things. Keep doing what I was doing, keep making those runs in behind. It was the one time I didn't actually make a run behind, though Detroit played it back to me and I brought it out of my feet, and thankfully that's the one that's gone in. So I'm not sure how much praise he's actually heaping. Keep doing that thing where you're running behind, but the one time I don't, I score a goal. So he was right, I don't know. And Eamon Dunphy probably taking very much the Adrian Barry line,
This is not a good day for me.
Just saying it for the sake of it.
Luck for my brand.
McCarthy's approach wasn't fair to the players. Meant we didn't learn as much as we should have.
What does it mean?
That basically throwing out 11 players who've never played together before will never play together again. What the hell are we ever going to learn from it?
Sometimes friendlies are about that exact thing. I wouldn't have a huge gripe with that. It's more the timing of it. Like, that's what friendlies are about, putting out a bunch of players who are never going to play together again and looking for the ones who can sink or swim. But I just would question doing it on the eve of such an important game. The Irish Independent this morning, it's football obviously all the way here as well, including that line on the right-hand side there that you've been just mentioning about the HRI and the future of Cheltenham Gold Cup favourite Kemboy being in the dark, writes Thomas Kelly here after that decision. That's across a lot of the papers today. Here's to you, Mr. Robinson. Sheffield United ace puts gloss on Ireland win. And McCarthy hails Maguire as Brady's Danish hopes fade. It's quite the mouthful there. Dan McDonald, Preston striker in contention for bench role on Monday after starring show at the Aviva. So Sean Maguire has put himself in the shop window.
And that's all they could have done. And I was talking with Stewie after the game about this. Like, there's obviously three different scenarios when we talk about substitutions in the last 20 minutes. One is that we're chasing. One is that the game is probably gone according to plan, which is it's still scoreless, or it's 1-1 and Ireland needs to press and try and score a winner, or one we're hanging on. And what scenarios do different players come on? Like Sean Maguire, is he actually we have a 1-0 lead and we just need somebody to run the channels, add a bit of pace? Or is he somebody who can come on and make an impact if you're trying to chase a goal? Yeah,
we've a 1-0 lead after 3 minutes and then we get beaten 24-1. Isn't that the way this thing goes? What do you think is going to happen on Monday night?
I have no idea.
Come on, be your usual.
I don't like making predictions. There's nothing to suggest we're going to go and win the game, aside from Denmark aren't all that. They're certainly not as good as they were 2 years ago. We've drawn with them, 3 of the last 4 times, and maybe we defend well and we scrape a winner somehow, somewhere.
Well,
score a goal from a set piece.
You've talked me around. I'm that motivation. It's the kind of motivation.
Yeah, you can't sit here and say, well, I think Ireland are going to go out and have a very definite game plan where they're going to control the game. They will hold Denmark off quite easily, and they'll get the goal that their play will deserve. Like, we haven't seen that. Maybe they will surprise us. Maybe this will be a conversation in 10 years' time where the players were on the bus on the way to the ground and thought, you know what, lads, this is our chance to qualify for a European Championship. We're just going hell for leather into this for the full 90 minutes. Screw the tactics. Let's just go for this. I just can't see it. I hope that's what
he brings you up to the cliff edge, gives you a look over the edge, and then says, no, come on.
I'm more confident than I was 2 years ago. I just don't think Denmark are anywhere near.
Right.
Like, they've been absolutely poxed to find themselves in this position where they just need a draw. Battered over in Switzerland. Battered by Switzerland in Denmark. I came away with
partly due to
away with 4 points from those 2 games.
Partly due to our own failings as well.
Well, obviously, the Georgia game is something they're going to have massive regrets about. The Sun, firsty work.
Where have I heard that before? Over there in the Star. I love the way you just read out the same.
I don't think I read it out.
I know, had a surprise on your face. Oh,
firsty work.
That's a really good
I went from, I don't get that, to, that's a really good headline.
It's the best insight into Nathan you'll ever have.
Derek, Shoney and Callum get up and running. Mick McCarthy heap praise on Sean Maguire, Derek Williams and Callum Robinson. And inside in the Sun, they have Parrott watch.
Oh, I love it.
So, goal threat. What do you think you got out of 5?
Out of 5, I'd say 3.5.
That didn't go halves. Come on, they kept it quite simple. 3 out of 5. Correct. Best side of goal was on 58 minutes when he was slipped through by Sean Maguire, but the keeper was onto him in a flash. Movement.
Good stop that, actually, to be fair. That was a good stop. The keeper got movement. Great movement. 4 out of 5.
Have you read these?
No.
4 out of 5. Constantly on the shoulder of the last defender. Presence.
Great off the shoulder.
Presence.
Super presence. I'd say again 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5, correct. The Irish players knew constantly where he was.
The whole stadium knew where he was. Nerves. Didn't look that nervy to me. I'd give him. Are we saying he had a lot of nerves, so he's a 4 out of 5, or he had not many nerves, so he's a 4 out of 5?
I would say 1 is very nervous, 5 is not nervous.
I would say not that nervous. They're probably going to give him a 3, but I would have said 4 out of 5.
They gave him a 5 out of 5.
All right, fair enough.
And sorry, I should have mentioned that 1 out of 5 was sick as a parrot. 5 out of 5 was who's a pretty boy.
That was the key to the whole thing.
Who's a pretty boy.
All right.
So he got 5 out of 5 for nerves. He stood with his hand on his heart for Aaron Levine, which showed how much it meant to him to play. And then he played as if it was a kickabout with his mates. Parrott never looked overawed, always showed for the ball, and was anything but hesitant when he got it.
Showed the viewers the photograph. This is the kind of.
Oh, sorry, we should mention that, yeah.
He's really got this one back to front.
He's
in a cage.
He's in a cage.
For people who can't see it, give us a full description there. Troy Parrott
in a cage with his arms raised and Parrott watch. Sick as a parrot, or who's a pretty boy? It was decided that he was a pretty boy.
Well, that was a successful item. The Irish Examiner this morning, Maestro Maguire is the thoughts here. Preston striker, that stunner to get off the mark for Ireland. More reflections on that game inside as well. Ronan O'Gara, Munster have been underachieving. It's time to shake a leg. We're going to get Ronan's thoughts on that a little bit later on as well. Another interesting line inside here that's on a few of the papers today is in relation to Kerry and their chairman Tim Murphy, who says counties should be allowed to negotiate live coverage deals directly with TV companies. This was on the back of the decision that they refused to have their county final shown on live TV. There'd been apparently an offer in from TG Carr via the GAA to televise Sunday's East Kerry Dr. Croke's senior football final. And the Kerry County Board said, no, we ain't having it because we're not getting properly compensated for it. He says he figures that, he said, when we built their centre of excellence, we promised the clubs they would never be levied for any outstanding debt. And so to forgo 40 grand, as he sees it, on Sunday, would not have been a sound commercial decision. So that's what happens. The GAA, there'd been a deal in place, or is a deal in place, that they would be given €5,000 from Croke Park to compensate for the loss of gate receipts from match broadcasts. And on the one hand, I think that individual counties negotiating their own TV deals is actually a really sound and solid idea that would be a really heavy, obviously, commercial winner for them. He does also, by the way, on the one hand say, showing these games live would not be good for our gate receipts, so that was just a bad decision for us. Bad decision. So we shouldn't have done that, and we won't be doing it. By the way, we are thinking about streaming these games live ourselves. Sorry, one goes slightly counter to the other. But the only other thing that I could think about is that it will make the better teams better, is one of the difficulties here. I mean, I don't know exactly what sort of money we'd be looking at over the course of a club calendar year and how much money could be made out of it. But the games that are going to be in most demand are going to be from the most high-profile counties, which is going to make the best better and further that gap between the weaker teams.
Yeah, the attraction of watching these club games isn't necessarily the rivalry between the two teams. It's watching two sets of county teammates go head to head. So it's watching Brafey against Ballintubber and watching the O'Sheas go up against the O'Connors. That's the type of thing you want to watch. I do think if they're going after a separate TV deal, how much money is in that? Well, firstly, as you say, it just totally contradicts what they've said. So streaming is different because what they may be saying is, all right, listen, we want people to come to the games, and we're not going to have it on RTE or on air where people can very easily watch it. If people are desperate to watch these games online, they can pay a subscription.
Shy quality game online.
Who knows? Maybe the quality is perfectly fine. But they're giving them that option. Whereas on the television side of it, also, like, aside from the county final and county semi-finals, like, who are they selling the TV rights to? If the counties individually.
Well, also the value individually, exactly, would be, I think, a difficulty. The power of collective bargaining, obviously, is you would think outweighs. But I mean, it doesn't mean that they can't go back and have a look at the T's and C's of the deal that's in place at the minute. We're under strict instructions here to flitter through these newspapers and get a move on.
The London Times, a grand way to qualify. No Sterling, no problem as Kane's hat-trick in England's 1,000 game secures place at Euro 2020. England's 7-0 win over Montenegro. The big talking point still, though, Raheem Sterling and Joe Gomez. Gomez was booed by the Wembley crowd as he came on, and Raheem Sterling sent out a tweet. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure. Matt Dickinson very much backing Gareth Southgate, saying he deserves the benefit of the doubt over his Sterling decision.
The Irish Daily Mail today has that racing story down here from Owen O'Brien, and then Philip Quinn at the Aviva last night, raring to go, but Mick cools Brady's hope of Denmark's start.
And the Guardian, Kane's Grand Slam, England roar to victory in 1,000th match to seal place at Euro 2020. It's a really good piece inside as well on Diego Maradona, how Maradona made it as a manager in drug-hit Mexico, obviously raising the question of how a one-time cocaine fiend found himself in the cocaine capital of the world. That's what they're talking about. There's a new 6-part documentary on Netflix about Maradona.
Right.
I saw it come up the other night, but I presumed it was just the actual documentary that was out.
Yeah.
But this seems to be a separate Netflix production.
There's your weekend plan, Nathan, sorted. What else have you got for us there?
The Mirror, finally. Flipping the bird. Mick's second string come from behind to beat Kiwis.
Oh, yeah. Kiwis. Bird.
Oh, my God.
It's a good one.
It was a tough night.
It's up there with Firsty Work.
First thing.
Is that us?
I'm done with that.
Right, that's it.